Hello and welcome to the Cancer Education Series brought to you by MercyOne and Above and Beyond Cancer. My name is Chris Gooddill and I'm the Executive Director of the Above and Beyond Cancer. And it's my privilege this evening to introduce our founder, Dr. Richard Deming, who will introduce our speaker for this evening. Dr. Deming.
Great, thanks, Chris. And thanks for everyone for being with us. There we go. I am excited about tonight. We have a really knowledgeable and articulate speaker, and I always learn so much from Lyndi. Lyndi Buckingham-Schutt is going to speak tonight. Lyndi grew up in Iowa, Waverly, Iowa. She got her undergrad degree at St. Olaf College in St. Peter, right?
Northfield, Minnesota.
Oh, Northfield. Sorry, St. Peter is that other. Yes. So, and then she got her graduate degree at Iowa State University, and she's a dietitian, and currently she is the Associate Director of Wellness, Nutrition, and Nutrition Policy at the Harkin Center, which is on the campus of Drake. And we have collaborated on many different projects. And Lyndi is just, not only is she a dietitian, but she is really a world expert on policy and how do you convert just your knowledge of nutrition and how people eat into public policy that creates more health and wellness. And she's going to speak to us tonight about seasonal eating for cancer prevention, patients, and survivors. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lyndi.
Thank you, Dr. Deming. You embarrassed me with all the wealth of compliments, and hopefully I can live up to it today. I love presenting for this cancer education series because I get to, as Dr. Deming said, I work a lot on policy, and I love working on that, and I'll bring some of it into the conversation we have today, but I love talking to all of you and kind of putting back on my traditional dietitian cap and talking about food, which is one of the main reasons I became a dietitian. And I thought, when I knew the date that I was going to be presenting, I thought, what better topic than talking about seasonal eating, because we are blessed with a lot of great food right now in Iowa, and we are just kind of on the cusp of getting that over the summer. But something I really like to talk about, again, kind of in my professional life, is the importance of seasonal eating, not only for our health, which I'm going to talk mostly about today, but also just for our planet. One of the things I'm going to touch on a little bit is seasonal eating, especially if you're sourcing from local farmers, local producers, is a great way to not only get healthy food, but then also support farmers who are farming in a more sustainable way. And then, of course, we have the economic benefit as well, which when we talk about policy, we always talk about money. So it's a really good part of it as well. But just to give you an overview of what I'm going to talk about today, we're going to start with just talking about why seasonal eating is a great thing. And hopefully it won't be hard to convince anybody here about that benefit. Next, we're going to talk about seasonal foods and the benefit of those foods. So particularly different categories of seasonal foods when they're in season and what benefit they would have to someone who might have cancer, if you're looking to prevent cancer, if you're a survivor. And then we're going to go talk a little bit more about ways to find seasonal foods. So again, we live in Iowa, which is an agriculture hub, and we are just blessed with some of the best soil, which means some of the best food in the United States. So I'm going to talk about ways to find seasonal food around you. And then lastly, because I think it's fun, I'm going to talk about some tips and tricks to eating seasonal food as well, and then end with questions and then conversation with Dr. Deming as well, and see what he has to add, because I'm sure he has great knowledge on this area as well. Okay, so to start, again, what's the power of produce and plant-based foods that are in season? First of all, this is a little bit subjective, but I personally think seasonal food tastes better. It's fresh. It's full of flavor. It's just the best you can get, and I think it just tastes good. Secondly, it's often cheaper due to just being more abundant, especially if it's seasonal, and it being local production. So you don't really have to go through a middleman to get it or go to your grocer, especially if it's in season. I'm sure you can go to a farmer's market right now, and certain foods like all the greens that I've been seeing around are going to be a little bit cheaper because the farmers are hoping to sell them and get rid of them so that they can go on to grow their next thing and bring that back to the farmer's market or to your local grocery store. And then lastly, I already touched on this, but seasonal eating it's better for the environment. It promotes a more sustainable way of farming, which I'm not going to get into largely today, but just any variety we can add to our agricultural practices is going to be not only good for obviously our planet and our soil, but it's also going to be great for our health because that gives us more access to it as well. Okay, so I'm not the only one who thinks that seasonal eating, especially, I guess when I'm talking about seasonal eating too, I'm talking a lot about sourcing seasonal local foods because that means that they're fresh. So this is important because not only in my opinion, but in the opinion of the American Institute of Cancer Research, which has provided a couple recommendations around seasonal eating, you could say. So one of them is to eat a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruit, and beans. And they really outline 4 goals within that. So the first goal is to consume a diet that contains at least 30 grams per day of fiber from food sources. Pretty much all the foods we're going to talk about today are a good source of fiber because they're going to be produce or whole grains, those types of things, beans, legumes, which are great sources of fiber. Second goal is to include in most meals food containing whole grains, non-starchy vegetables, fruits, pulses, such as beans and lentils. And these are all things that are readily available here in Iowa during the summer and even in the off-summer seasons if you want to do local purchasing. Goal number 3 is to eat a diet high in all types of plant foods, including at least 5 portions or servings of a variety of non-starchy vegetables and fruit every single day. So typically this is probably, if I was in person, I would ask people to raise their hands if they achieve that goal per day, because to some people it seems like a lot. But hopefully if you're eating seasonally, I know for me, I'm going to talk about the importance of it for me and my family, but every week I get a seasonal box of food and we have more than enough servings to provide 5 portions or servings per day for our week. And then lastly, the last goal is if you eat starchy roots and tubers like potatoes or corn or peas as staple foods, you should also eat non-starchy vegetables, fruit, and pulses or legumes regularly too, if possible. So these are all goals that fit into seasonal local eating. The AICR also recommends to limit our consumption of fast foods, other processed foods high in fat, starches, and sugars. So this goal is to limit consumption of processed foods high in fat, starches, and sugars, including fast foods, many pre-prepared dishes, snacks, bakery foods, desserts, and candy. And kind of goes without saying, in other words, this is saying take advantage of eating that seasonal, fresh, local fruits, vegetables, and pulses, and maybe steer away, I think at all times, but especially in this seasonal season of fresh fruit and vegetables away from that fast food and other pre-prepared dishes. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more. I'm not going to focus too much on this, but this is a topic that I know I've talked about in other presentations I've given for the cancer education series. But something that's important when we're talking about cancer prevention is phytochemicals, which are an important component and naturally occurring plant chemical in most plants that give plants their distinctive color, odor, and taste. So when you think about eating fresh fruits and vegetables or any type of fruit or vegetable, think about eating a variety of different colors because that's where you're going to get the most benefits or the most variety of these phytochemicals. And they have been shown in research studies to have a lot of good effects when it comes to cancer. And I'm not going to go through this list because I'm going to go through a variety of different phytochemicals, specifically the foods within each of these categories, and talk about their benefit, but then also talk about what's in season, when it's in season, and then we'll talk about how you can get it. So we're going to start with, again, I'm going to talk about kind of subgroups of different fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and beans. But we're going to start with carotenoids. So carotenoids is probably a familiar term to a lot of you. Immediately, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking carrots. Carrots are a very well-known carotenoid. And when I talk about carotenoids, what I'm really talking about is a family of different chemicals that have potential cancer-preventing effects. So some of the chemicals that particularly are important when we're talking about this is beta-carotene, lycopene, and lutein, which provide what has been shown, or they've been shown to provide what a lot of you have heard of as antioxidants. Antioxidants are really important because what they do is they work against free radicals, which are produced as part of just our normal body metabolism process, or we can get them from other environmental exposures. But what happens when we have excessive levels of these free radicals, they can cause DNA damage that could potentially initiate cancer development and promote chronic inflammation that is really a hallmark, a characteristic of enabling cancer development. So what the benefit is with a lot of carotenoids is this antioxidant work against or protecting your cells from the damage of these free radicals. There's been some, it's not all perfectly clear. As a researcher, I like to provide the best evidence and information to all of you. So there is some conflicting evidence about which cancers it's better for, which have the most, what carotenoids have the most preventive effect in different types of cancers. But what I can tell you based off of information, again, from the American Institute of Cancer Research in association with the World Cancer Research Fund, is that they claim that there is some kind of association between carotenoids and reduced risk of cancer. That evidence is somewhat limited, and a lot of that has to do with the way the studies are done. But they are saying that eating these foods does potentially have a preventive or protective effect. And so as I go through each of these categories, what I really want to highlight is I'm going to have a figure like this where it looks at the different seasons. And again, this is seasonal in general. So if you're going to go to your grocery store and you want to buy something more in season, even if it's not locally sourced here in Iowa, this is a good guide to go off of. And I'm going to show you later on what's more seasonal specifically for Iowa in one big chart. But this is a way to see if you go to your grocery store and you want, again, kind of subjectively, my opinion, but I would assume a lot of you probably agree with me. If you want to go to your grocery store and buy something that's going to, fresh produce that's going to taste the best, you're going to want to buy it if it's in season, whether that's in Iowa season or if it's in season in Florida. So I'm sure a lot of you probably agree with me. You're not going to go to a grocery store in the middle of winter and find a really good tomato. Tomatoes are really good in the summer. And tomatoes are a good category within carotenoids because they're high in lycopene, which is one of those compounds that has been shown to have this associative effect between cancer prevention and intake. So some other things you can see on here, mangoes are better in the summer. And again, I'm sure some of you might come from places that I've heard fresh mangoes that fall off the tree are some of the best things you can ever eat. I have yet to experience that, but that's on my bucket list for life. So you can go all down this list and get to really, beets and carrots, which are great to see that they're in season pretty much all the time. And that makes a lot of sense because they're root vegetables. So a lot of root vegetables are going to have a longer variation or a longer term of being in season because of the way that they're grown, and kind of just less exposure to the elements. So I encourage you to, I will share this, but you can come back and watch the recording. to go through this or take some notes and see what is good to eat and when it's good to eat and follow these guidelines. Okay, let me see here. Okay, the next broad category we're going to talk about is greens. So greens, kind of in the this category, get their color. It was just really interesting from chlorophyll, which is something that all plants make. So in humans, we make something called ATP. That's the end product of the breakdown of our food and what really fuels our cells. In plants, it's called chlorophyll, and chlorophyll not only fuels the plant, which in turn will fuel us, but it also gives it this distinctive green color. So chlorophyll is found in fruits and vegetables like kiwi, asparagus, cucumbers, and the important thing is they've been found to have, again, this antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. We're going to talk about more specifically cruciferous vegetables here in a little bit, but the ones that are part of the green family, so broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, contain indoles, which may help protect against some types of cancer, including breast cancer, prostate and colon cancer. And then leafy greens like spinach and broccoli are also high in folate, which is a B vitamin that a lot of you might be familiar with because it's commonly taken by pregnant women because it helps reduce the risk of birth defects. It's also an important vitamin within our DNA synthesis pathways. And then some green vegetables like kale and spinach also contain lutein. So lutein is similar in the part of the carotenoid family that it helps keep our eyes healthy. So together with this possible cancer prevention, eating greens is great because it may also help reduce the risk of cataracts and other age-related macular degeneration. So if you're not encouraged enough to eat it for any related type of cancer prevention, go ahead and eat it for your eyes. They will thank you. Okay, and a great thing about greens is they are pretty much in season all the time. You're going to be hard pressed to go somewhere and not have greens be in season. Kale, again, particularly is a really hardy, resilient green that maybe some of you don't like, but it is always, it is one of those things you can grow even in Iowa pretty much every season and it will be good. It's great, it's easy. Greens are easy to grow in greenhouses or hoop houses. So I think you can always be confident going to the grocery store and knowing you're going to have good greens. But I will say right now is a prime time in Iowa to get really good, fresh, local greens. Okay, as promised, we're going to talk about cruciferous vegetables. One of a lot of you probably least favorite or favorite categories. I feel like it's a very divisive category of food. I know my husband loves broccoli. I have never been a person who loves cruciferous vegetables, but I can be talked into eating them because I will eat pretty much any fruit or vegetable. But cruciferous vegetables I would encourage everyone to explore and eat them for a lot of reasons, but they're really rich in nutrients, including carotenoids again. They're high in vitamin C, E, and K. They also have folate, as I talked about, and then they're a really good source of fiber. So in addition, I mentioned this, but cruciferous vegetables also contain indoles and indolates, which are sulfur-containing chemicals. These chemicals are what is responsible for kind of that aroma you get or the bitter flavor that you have when you eat them, but they're doing a really great thing for you. So during food preparation to chewing, digestion, these glycoinsulates and cruciferous vegetables are broken down to form biological active compounds such as indoles, which I discussed earlier. These have been frequently examined for their anti-cancer effects. So one other big benefit of them. Specifically, they've been found to inhibit the development of cancer in several organs when you look in animal models, so rats and mice, including bladder, breast, colon, liver, and stomach cancer. Again, we kind of have to take some of this with a grain of salt because a lot of the studies have been done in animal models, but what they have been found to do in these models is They help protect cells from DNA damage, as I mentioned previously with folate. They help inactivate carcinogens. They have an antiviral and antibacterial effect. Similar to a lot of fruits and vegetables, they have an anti-inflammatory effect. They potentially help induce cell death. And then they could also help inhibit tumor blood vessel formation or angiogenesis and tumor cell migration. So again, kind of take that with a grain of salt because a lot of those studies have been done in animal models and it's not as easy to replicate and look at those in human studies. But that's what we think some of the benefits of cruciferous vegetables are. So again, here is a nice table of the different seasonal varieties of cruciferous vegetables. This is kind of this chart's line a little bit in terms of when broccoli's in season in Iowa. I'm going to get to that chart later. It's usually in season a little bit towards the end of summer, so I guess you could categorize it as fall, but we do see broccoli come in season here in Iowa in the fall. But largely, cruciferous vegetables are not summer seasonal vegetables, unless we're talking about the greens like arugula and kale. Okay. So another large group that we're going to talk about is beans, legumes, and soy. So beans and legumes, for the, in my food dietitian circles, we don't talk often, but the conversation will come up, or we'll hear people say, what's the difference between beans and legumes? Well, all beans are legumes, but not all legumes are beans. So legumes are plants that bear fruit that grow in pods. So a legume would be an example of that would be a green bean. But if you take the actual beans out of the pods, then that's a legume, or that's a bean, excuse me, no longer a legume. So legumes are only when they're still within their pod. When you take them out of their pod, now they're what's called a bean or a pulse. So a pulse is a bean or a lentil, which I know I might be confusing you guys even more. But if someone asks you, all beans are legumes, that's the answer to that. So like cruciferous vegetables, beans help prevent and fight cancer in multiple ways. Beans contain cancer-fighting substances like protease inhibitors, which may slow tumor growth, phytates, which may help prevent or slow cancer, certain cancers, manganese, which helps form an enzyme that protects cells from damage. And honestly, I don't know how to say the first one. But these other two chemicals, which have antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties within beans, help protect it, are protective as well. And then something that's important to consider, and maybe some of you have experienced this, but beans are best eaten cooked. Beans have a lot of, they have something called lectins, but then they have undigestible starches within them too. That makes it, if you eat them raw, they're harder to digest, and that's when you get a lot of that indigestion and upset stomach from beans. And I think there's a very common term or a common phrase that's used about eating beans because of these indigestible starches. So something besides cooking them is, I recommend anytime you're taking them out of a can, that you rinse them really well. That's kind of for two reasons. One, to get those starches off the beans, because rinsing them helps. But secondary to that, it's better to rinse them because you're going to remove more of that sodium, so they're going to have less salt, even if you're buying low sodium beans in a can. And then lastly, soy has been shown actually to have benefits as well, and it's even though it's kind of been discussed as something maybe to avoid when you have cancer, or avoid to try not to get cancer, soy is safe. So there's been numerous studies that show that you can eat soy and it doesn't have any negative effect that they know of right now on cancer development. Okay, and so again, great news. Legumes, beans, soy, lentils, they're in season almost all the time. So I encourage you to eat these, not only because they're a great source of seasonal produce that's always seasonal, but they're a really good source of protein as well, and a good alternative to some plant-based foods, which are also a great thing to kind of to limit or to reduce, not to limit, but to reduce at least in your diet, to have a healthier overall diet, and also follow recommendations that are put out by the AICR as well. Okay, so another category that you might not think of as much as seasonal, but it is, are oats, whole grains, and more. I like to talk about this category anyways, because I think eating whole grains is something everybody should do. The dietary guidelines for Americans recommend making at least half your grains whole. I recommend making them 100% whole, which is incredibly hard if you eat outside of your home at all, because it's not as common to see whole grains. It's getting a little bit more common, but try to make at least half your grains whole grains. This is good for a lot of reasons. Getting back to that, to fiber, whole grains have a lot more fiber in them, which is something we discussed at the beginning in terms of the AICR recommendations. But whole grains are great too because they have a low glycemic index. And what that means is when you eat whole grains, oats, anything that has a higher fiber content or a higher whole grain content, you're going to have a lower or a slower response in terms of your blood glucose. So your blood sugar is not going to spike up super fast and drop. You're going to just have this nice slow rise and slow fall, which is beneficial for many reasons, including if you don't want to get that immediate sugar high and then the crash. That's what's going to help prevent that. So oats are also really great because they contain a lot of these important vitamins and minerals: manganese, B vitamins, selenium, which is a mineral that helps the immune system fight cancer, beta glucan, which bolsters the immune system, plant ligands, which help protect against hormone-sensitive cancers, and then phytic acid, which has been shown to potentially retard cell growth and work as an antioxidant. So again, we're really lucky. Grains are in season almost all the time, especially whole grains are. So feel free to, buy them all the time. You can buy them locally, and I'll talk a little bit how to do that later. I often get asked by friends, family, people who find out I'm a dietitian, what's the deal with quinoa? Why does everyone love quinoa so much? A lot of you might already know one of the benefits of quinoa is it is a grain with a higher protein content than a lot of other grains, not by a ton, but by a little bit. But the important thing about that protein content is proteins are made up of amino acids, and there are 9 amino acids that are essential to our body. So these, by essential, I mean our body cannot synthesize or create them on their own. We have to eat them to get them. Most essential amino acids are found in animal-based products. Quinoa is the kind of the one specialty or star of the grain world that has all those essential amino acids. So if you're eating a mostly plant-based diet, it's good to incorporate quinoa in there because you're going to get all those essential amino acids then. Not to say you can't get your essential amino acids from eating a plant-based diet. Essential amino acids are in all other plant-based produce, but you're going to have to do what we call complementary protein sources. So for example, rice is high in one essential amino acid, but low in, it's high in methionine and low in lysine. But black beans are high in lysine, but low in methionine. So if you want to get those essential amino acids, you need to complement and eat the two together to get all of them. Or if you just want to eat one source, you can just eat quinoa and you're going to find all your essential amino acids in that. And then the last 3 are more of those starchy vegetables, but these would be considered more of that whole grain, fiber rich. White potatoes, maybe a little bit less, but fiber rich foods. And corn, we don't need to talk about it. We know that it is seasonal and it's in Iowa. I got some recently from the farmer's market. It's not quite at its peak yet, but I know a lot of you will be eating corn this summer along with me. It's easy to source because it's hard to kind of go to a street corner and not find someone selling corn. Okay. One of the last broad categories I'm going to talk about is herbs. So I think herbs are important not only because they're going to have a small relevant benefit to this conversation we're having today, but they also just make your food taste good. And that's a really important thing when we're talking about, eating a lot of plant-based foods, just to kind of punch them up a little bit, even though they taste great, but punch them up with some fresh herbs as well. So fresh herbs, whether they be fresh or dried, again, have this potential anti-inflammatory or antioxidant effect that we've discussed about being key in parts of cancer prevention. These are just some extra tips around if you do eat certain herbs. So turmeric, which is a really popular, and I am sure a lot of you heard about it. It's popular in terms of health in general. It's not something that I necessarily encourage people to overload on. I say add it to things if you like the taste of it, but I wouldn't recommend necessarily eating it every day and by the spoonful. But if you do use it, add it to black pepper, because supposedly that's supposed to help increase the availability and the absorption of it. And then another one that is not new to me, I've actually heard this for a while, and I think this is true for a lot of fruits and vegetables. But when you crush or chop garlic in particular, let it sit for about 10 minutes before cooking to increase its benefits. And the way that I heard this explained to me before, and I thought was really great, is anytime you chop or dice or manipulate a piece of fresh produce, it's also responding in the same way that our body would respond to a cut. So there's a lot of, in our body, what we're having a antibody or an immunoglobulin response, or we're having B cells or T cells, that immune response, and they're all flooding to that site to provide aid to that hurt or that cut. Well, it's similar in when you chop up fruits and vegetables, and garlic in particular. I'm not sure why. When you chop it up, you're seeing kind of this rush of these beneficial compounds, the immune response within fruits and vegetables, that could potentially have this beneficial effect if you let them sit for a little bit longer and accumulate. So again, great news here. Herbs in general are pretty much always seasonal, and of course, you're going to find fresh herbs. Right now I have out in my garden, I have a lot of basil. I have oregano, which beware if you plant oregano or mint, it's going to spread and it's very invasive. So hopefully you like it. But I love oregano, so I'm glad it's invasive, because every summer then I'll take whatever is left at the end of the season and I'll dry it and then crush it, and so then I can use it throughout the rest of the year to eat. But yeah, any of these are good at any time of the year. Okay, and then we're going to end with kind of just a broader category of foods with other cancer-fighting properties. So things we didn't talk about: asparagus, mushrooms, berries, watermelon, melons, apples, citrus fruits. These have all been found to have cancer-fighting properties. And particularly, again, thinking about phytochemicals in the color, berries and a lot of other fruits and vegetables, anything with a lot of color, contains something called anthocyanins, which can help fight cancer cell proliferation. And then watermelon also is a really good source of lycopene, just like tomatoes are. So this, to end on this kind of broad category of things, this is a really great table that I know I've shown in a different presentation from the American Institute of Cancer Research, that outlines what the phytochemical is, what the plant source is, and then the possible benefits of this are. And again, possible benefits of all this is always kind of with an asterisk, because you really have to dig down and to understand how the research was conducted that came up with that conclusion. But these are the broad categories and the fruits and vegetables you could eat that have these potentially beneficial effects. And these effects, whether you're thinking about them related to cancer or to other, chronic disease states, are a good thing. So at the end of the day, I hope you all just eat a variety of fresh fruits and vegetables for your health overall. Okay, so now to kind of move into some fun parts where this is something that I actually have printed out and and put on my fridge because I like to look at it. I like to know what's coming up. I like to know what in my own garden is going to come and when it's going to come. And it's just a good way to be able to navigate this seasonal produce here in Iowa. So this table, which is freely available to everyone, I included the link, and I'm happy to share these slides too, but you just go to iowaagriculture.gov. And if you just even want to search Iowa fruit and vegetable magnet, it'll come up with this PDF for you, and it's going to give you a great way to look at the Iowa fruit and vegetable harvest calendar. You might even be able to call the IDLES, the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, and ask them to send you a copy of this because they do have this in magnet form too. Something that my husband and I participated in, and I encourage all of you, if you're already not doing it, is to look into CSA. So that's community supported agriculture. So CSAs are farmers, groups of farmers within the area that you're at that will, during the peak season or all year round, provide boxes of whatever they're growing that's in season for you on a weekly, bi-weekly, or bi-monthly basis. My husband and I get a box of produce from Global Greens, which is a CSA that Lutheran Services of Iowa has right here in Des Moines. I love to talk about the CSA because not only are they growing fresh fruit and vegetables that are local here, right here in Des Moines, they're also working with immigrant farmers. So a lot of and helping them, subsidizing them with some land to grow their own produce as a way for them to, first of all, make money, but then second of all, grow produce and vegetables that are relevant to their culture, which my husband and I really appreciate because we get really interesting food that we might not otherwise buy at the farmer's market or buy at the grocery store. So this is a newsletter. Most CSAs will give you a newsletter too when you get your CSA box, but this is our newsletter that we get every week. So it includes exactly what we're getting in our box. So this is actually the newsletter from yesterday from when I picked up our CSA. We got garlic scapes, we got a head of lettuce, we got a bag of baby kale, we got a bunch of turnips, we got a bunch of radishes, we got a bunch of green onions, and then we also got either a spinach or lettuce mix, and we actually got the lettuce mix. So it's a ton of food. Like I said, this is enough to help my husband and I meet those 5 servings of fruit and vegetables every day for our week. If not, feed my family when they come visit, which often during the summer I say, please come visit. We have an excess amount of produce that I need to share with you. But this newsletter is also great. It talks about what's happening out in the field, what the farmers are working on. Sometimes in this one, you can see it features a specific farmer and talks about their story. And then lastly, it has a couple recipes on it. So last night we actually did the grilled salad turnips, and they were delicious and perfect, and a nice way to use this recipe and then also use the food that we got. And if you can see the grilled salad turnips, we not only use the turnips, but we also use the turnip greens. So we're able to use, head to toe the entire piece of produce that we got. Another great way to get some local food year round is through the Iowa Food Co-op. So the Iowa Food Co-op is actually based here in Des Moines. Their physical location, they do pop-ups, but they have a physical location that's on Franklin and Franklin and 60th Street, I think. It's very close. I'm going to give it away, but it's very close to where I live, which is really nice for us. But something that Iowa Food Co-op does well and really progressed with over the last year because of COVID-19 is they have an online ordering system, and then you order your produce from them. It's all local produce. It's a catalog you can go through online. And then you can schedule your bi-weekly pickup with them at different spots and get exactly what you want. So this isn't only vegetables and fruit. This is grains. You can get dairy. You can get meat from them. You can get You can get honey, you can get herbs, you can get just about anything that you would think about wanting, and it's all local and it's all fresh. I might stop sharing so I can go to these websites to talk to you about each of these websites, but these are 4 websites that I wanted to bring to your attention because they each have some great information about local food. So I'm going to see if I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to share again if I can. I'm not super adept at this, so let's see here. Okay. Get back to Zoom here. And okay. I think I'm on the screen. Okay. So the first one that I want to talk to you guys about is IDLE's Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship website. What I really want to highlight on here is this has information about our local farmers market as well as a lot of other great resources. So all you have to do is come down to this farmers market directory, you click on it, and it'll take you to a page. I'm not going to go to it, but it's going to take you to a page where all you have to do is type in your location, and it'll bring up a list of all the farmers markets that are around you, the times they are, all that information that you need to get there. As you can see, there's other great information here as well. There's farmers market nutrition programs. So if you are on any kind of food assistance program, if you're on SNAP, if you're on WIC, if you're on any kind of older adult feeding program, there's a lot of incentives or ways for you to kind of get more for your money at farmers markets using the incentives that these programs offer to really double up your money to buy more fresh fruits and vegetables or whatever you want to at the farmers market. Then we have another website that I really like. So this is a USDA SNAP Ed connection website, but it's a seasonal produce guide, and it's going to tell you again what's in season now. And then if you come down here, it's going to give you fruits and vegetables for spring, summer, fall, winter. And if you click on those, it's going to, we'll click on one just to show you here. It's going to talk to you about apples, the nutritional quality content of them, how to use apples, how to store them, if you want to do some teaching around them, all those types of things. And then if you like apples, you might also like these other fruits or vegetables. So I think it's a great tool and has some good recipes as well. Apples was an easy one to pick. I should have picked something harder. I should have picked broccoli or something. And then this website, this is an Iowa State University Extension website. And this is the Iowa CSA directory. So again, this is that community sustainable agriculture that I was talking about. If you're interested in participating in one of those, you can come to this website and you can look up a CSA near you based off of your district. And there's obviously a variety of different ones. So wherever you go, I know there's a lot of really great ones here in Des Moines. My sister lives in Decorah, Iowa. I know they have a ton of great ones there. And I'm sure throughout the rest of the state, it's a really growing and developing way of sourcing food. And then lastly, the last website I'm going to show you is the American Institute of Cancer Research's Foods That Fight Cancer and Foods to Steer Clear of Explained website. So this is gonna have more information about what we talked about in terms of those broader categories today, if you want to learn specific information. But it's also going to have recipes and other information within this. So a good place to come to find out what to eat more of. And then, foods to limit too, if you want to look at that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing again and go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so as promised, we're going to end with just some tips and tricks about how to do a better job of incorporating some of the seasonal produce, fresh seasonal produce into your diet, because I do know it's hard. It's a lot of work. Produce is more work than a lot of things. It's a lot more work than, going through fast food. It's a lot more work than microwaving a frozen dinner. But there are ways to do it and ways to be smart about doing it that make it a little bit easier. And again, some of these tips might be familiar to some of you because I've presented them in the past, but I'm a big believer in kind of telling you until you do it. So one of the first tips and one of the best tips is often to get organized the night before or on the weekend. So just have fresh fruit and vegetables chopped. Often if I'm chopping up some peppers or tomatoes or just whatever I'm chopping up, broccoli, I will make sure to chop up all of it or whatever I have in front of me and then put the rest in a container in the fridge. So then the next time I go to use it, it's right there and ready for me to use. Another thing, keep breakfast simple, but try to incorporate some veggies into it. My sister is a big proponent of what she calls breakfast salads, which is essentially just scrambled eggs with whatever vegetables she can throw into it. But saying breakfast salads sounds like you have started your day in a very healthy way. And then get cooking. Try to plan at least one night to try a new, let's just say, plant-based recipe or locally sourced recipe that you might not have otherwise tried. Having a CSA really pushes my husband and I to experiment with the different foods within them. We kind of kept saying this year we were really excited for a CSA because we were feeling a little bit like we were in a rut with the food we were eating. So we were excited to get new, fresh ideas or new, fresh food so we could try new ideas. So some more ways in terms of planning for success, try using new ways to cook. Try roasting your vegetables. Most vegetables roast very easily and well, and they make them taste better. They always bring out the natural sweetness and caramelize them in a way that just makes them taste better. Otherwise, try steaming a microwave is always a easy trick as well. Think about different ways to incorporate veggies into your main dish. So just always add extra veggies into a casserole or a pasta dish or anything you're making. Add them to your sandwich, tacos, anything that's around. And again, this is nice when you have that already prepped veggies, you can just throw them on. And then try using zoodles, which are noodle vegetables, as a main dish. You can buy these at the grocery store already, but again, we're going to have a lot of, zucchini is going to go crazy here in a little bit. We're having this hot season already. Try zoodling zucchini, noodling zucchini, and try that as your pasta or your starch in your dish instead. Again, prepare ahead of time, cut up your favorite veggies and have them ready to go. And then I always say, always have a veggie side, even if veggies are your main dish. So there's rarely a night that we won't have a side salad. The only nights we don't have a side salad or some kind of roasted vegetable is the nights that we actually have a salad for dinner. Okay, so I'm going to end it there. I'll take questions, but I'd love to for Dr. Deming to kind of chime in now too and add anything that he has to everything I presented. But if anybody has any questions or wants some additional information, my email address is up here too.
Great. I am coming back on here. And Lyndi, could I have you? There we go. And I think we have a question from the audience. So we have a live studio audience tonight. And so who now repeat your question?
Okay. Healthy fats.
Healthy fats. Yeah. So we have a question about what fats are the healthiest fats to eat, and in line with your presentation, is there seasonality around fats?
I don't think as much around. I'm sure there's seasonality around, especially healthy fats. Mm-hmm. So your healthier fats are going to be your extra virgin olive oils, even your grapeseed canola oils, those kind of things, even ahead of vegetable oils. And those are healthier because they're higher in unsaturated fatty acids as opposed to those saturated fatty acids. So saturated fatty acids are often high in what we call solid fats. So they're high in meat product. You know, if you eat a ribeye or something that has a nice piece of fat in it, that's high in saturated fat. But those liquid fats are higher in unsaturated fatty acids, which have been not only shown to not cause as many negative effects in terms of our cardiovascular disease. So saturated fats in particular have an adverse effect to our cardiovascular system because of a lot of buildup of those saturated fatty acids in our blood vessels. saturated fatty acids potentially have this kind of anti-inflammatory effect that I talked a lot about with a lot of these fruits and vegetables, particularly omega-3 fatty acids, which isn't necessarily a fat that you would use for preparing things. It's in salmon and some other, especially seafood. It's high in seafood. But fat is important. I want people to use fat, and I want people to use healthy fat. So I think this is a great question, and I think it fits in really well. Something that I didn't say with carotenoids, especially. So carotenoids are high in vitamin A, and vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. So vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble vitamins. So that means that they're better absorbed with fat, as opposed to water-soluble vitamins, which are vitamins B and C. So if you want to get the most absorption and benefit from those fat-soluble vitamins, you should eat them with fat. So roasted carrots and olive oil is a really good thing to do.
I'm going to get back to this concept of seasonality because, as a doc, I care for the health of the people I'm taking care of. I also care about the health of the planet. And so tell us what's unhealthy about eating a pineapple from New Zealand in the middle of winter? And I mean, in terms of planetary, and seasonal eating is not only good because you're eating seasonal foods, but there's also some environmental or planetary concerns, right? In terms of eating in season and eating local.
Yes, definitely. The reason we kind of harp on local is because I think I mentioned this. Local means that it's not coming from very far. So there's not a lot of transportation involved. There's not a lot of processing involved. There's not a lot of distribution involved. So our end diet, so we often think about just the food that's on our plate, right? But we need to start thinking about our plate as part of this larger food system. So the food system really starts with where the food's grown and what kind of practices they're using to grow that food. So if it's maybe not in season, they're maybe not using the best practices to grow it. They might be using more artificial, synthetic things to help that really flourish and grow, which isn't great for the soil. So that's where we can start with that. Growing it might not be the best if it's not in season. But then if we're thinking about it coming from New Zealand, it's going to come, it's going to get on a truck and go to a port, and then it's going to get on or go to a plane and then be transported here on a plane, and then going to be transported to another warehouse, and then to our grocery store, and then to our plates. And then, of course, the end product of the food system is food waste. So we're going to be wasting some of that food too, which anything that we're not composting, or if we're throwing away things that could be composted, that's going to landfills, and that's really bad for our environment as well. So if we're cutting down on kind of all of those other things and just eating locally sourced food and trying to eat as much of it as we can, and by as much of it, I mean, all, like I said, the entire turnip, then we're really cutting down on those negative consequences all along the way. So less transportation means less carbon emissions from cars and airplanes, and which we know has a negative effect on our climate from greenhouse gases and things like that. So it's healthy to do it locally. It supports our local farmers, and then it's as Dr. Deming, it's just more sustainable.
Yeah, more sustainable, healthy for the planet. And then also, I've heard other talks where we're talking about, trying to eat local and trying to eat in season. But as you know, in summer and fall, we have an overabundance. So it's fair to say, or tell me what you think about canning. So taking foods that are fresh from the garden, but you have way too many to eat. But we know that we're not going to be out picking fresh vegetables from our garden in January. So is canning or freezing or taking fresh food from our garden and putting it in a condition that we can then grab it out of a storage container, whether it's canned or frozen, in January and February, does that count as seasonal eating?
Yes, it does. And it's a great way to preserve all of those great flavors that you're talking about. Even transforming them into other things. My sister has jars and jars of salsa that she has from all the tomatoes that she has. She transformed it in a way that it's going to taste good for all the year. And then freezing is a wonderful option for so many reasons. And people often will say, well, does it take away from the nutritional benefit of the what you're freezing or what you're preserving? And it really doesn't. Especially when we talk about freezing, you're freezing it at the peak of what it is, and so you're preserving all of that. So when you thaw it out, you're not losing it. It could be better than if it was too old or not fresh enough. So it's a really good question and a great way to extend that seasonal eating. And there's really great, if you guys already don't know, ISU Extension has really great tips and tools and is happy to help with understanding how to can, because it's not intuitive to everybody.
Mm-hmm. And then I loved you talked about the herbs that you're growing, and sometimes you have people talking about natural foods and all the different herbs, and the next thing you do, they're wanting you to go buy capsules that have the herbs in it. But I love this idea of taking the fresh herbs and actually cooking with them and using them to create meals while they're still fresh, as opposed to just buying the dried version. So maybe share, and this is probably going to be the last question looking at the time, some of the creative things you do with all of the herbs that are taking over your garden and yard. What are some creative ways? I mean, do you use them just to make salads? Do you have ways of incorporating them into other dishes?
Yeah, great question. I think it depends a lot on the herb. And I mean, I'm going to say you can use them in just about anything, but I love oregano in the summer. Oregano is one I'm going to just use as kind of a reference point because we have a lot of it and we use it often, but I'll take oregano, and we have a mint plant too, which is also a very pervasive thing. So be careful planting it, but I'll take those and I'll mix them with chickpeas, and then usually some type of nut, ground them up, and then make falafels out of them. And so you have this herby, proteiny, nutty falafel. So that's one way to use them. That's not just, decorative approach, which isn't a bad thing too. But we get a lot of cilantro, and we put cilantro on tacos. We put cilantro on stir fry. We put cilantro on whatever. But as you mentioned, one of my favorite things to do with herbs is to make salad dressings. And I'm also a big pusher of just making your own salad dressing. Stock your pantry up with some really good vinegars, a good olive oil, a couple good herbs, and you have an amazing salad dressing that is at your disposal. And then also is a good way to use add a side salad, like I said, to every single meal. You have this great, dressing that you made with this fresh greens, and it's just a perfect complement to your meal.
Great. And I love the ideas you gave us about the CSAs and the Iowa co-ops. I mean, you look at all of those things, and just to be able to have those and experiment and try all of the different varieties of fruits and vegetables that are out there. So thank you, Lyndi, for your talk and for sharing with us how to eat healthier and how to also help our environment in the process. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris, and Chris is going to send us out for the evening.
Lyndi, thanks very much. It was insightful, and some simple things that we can add to, or ways that we can, without a lot of work, really eat much healthier. And I appreciate that wholeheartedly. So thank you. This was recorded, as all of our cancer education series are recorded, and they're available on our Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube page. You can just go to YouTube and type in the search engine just for Above and Beyond Cancer. It also will be published on the MercyOne Cancer Center page, and you can find that by going to the MercyOne Cancer Center webpage and just typing in Cancer Education Series. So hope you can be part of the series again next Wednesday, and if not, go to our YouTube channel where the last year's sessions have all been recorded. So Lyndi, thanks very much. We really appreciate your expertise.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody.